today's masterclass is Embracing Parenthood, Overcoming Guilt and Feelings of Inadequacy. Today we are talking about the complex emotions that some parents have of guilt and feelings of inadequacy. The talk will delve into common scenarios where feelings of guilt and inadequacy emerge, reassuring you that these emotions are both normal and widespread. You'll gain insights into practical strategies for dealing with guilt, learning the importance of self-care, and understanding how to set realistic expectations for yourself and your parenting journey. In the final segment of the talk with Sylvia and Michelle, they have all sorts of incredible strategies and techniques, so that by the end of this session, you'll be equipped with some knowledge and techniques to help you overcome these challenging emotions and embrace parenthood with confidence and self-control. I do have to say some of the boring stuff, the legal stuff. Just a quick reminder that we do seek to provide a supportive and informative and educational masterclass. However, for any healthcare issues, you must refer to your healthcare team. We don't ever suggest that you do anything contrary to any healthcare advice. So please do make sure that you are speaking to your doctors for any medical concerns or questions. Super quick introduction about me. This absolutely isn't about me, but just to let you know who I am, I'm Kathy Rougier. A lot of you will know me from the Pregnant and Popped, the fair that happens twice a year in Singapore. But just to also let you know that this all started, and my passion for helping mums and bringing together all of these perinatal service providers started because I am a certified postpartum and infant care doula. So I specialize in helping mums in the trenches in the first few days, weeks, and months after having a baby. I often describe it and say that I wipe babies' bottoms at the same time as wiping mums' tears. Is possibly the easiest way to understand what I do in those home support visits. But it is not about me today. So the most important people that I need to introduce to you. So Dr. Sylvia often needs no introduction in Singapore, but as she is now based overseas, and because she totally deserves a full introduction, I'll tell you a little bit about her, and she can fill in the blanks when she starts to talk to us all. So Sylvia is a registered counsellor and psychotherapist who specialises in maternal mental health. She is a postpartum support international coordinator, and she's also the co-founder of the free support group for mothers, which is called Mindful Mums in Singapore. Most recently, with her PhD in clinical applied psychophysiology, Sylvia conducts research into innovative treatments for birth trauma and perinatal mental health. She practices integratively to help her clients work through pre- and postpartum depression and anxiety, pregnancy loss, birth trauma, difficulties with bonding, relationship adjustment, anger management, and early parenting issues. And today, she is also joined by the wonderful Michelle Ma. Michelle is a qualified mindfulness and self-compassion trainer. In her own words, she believes in the power of stilling the mind in this distracted world for deeper clarity, calm, and connection. She's a mum of 2 young children and advocates for mental and emotional well-being, often using the life jacket analogy of taking care of oneself first before taking care of others. They are both here today in their capacity with Alliance Counselling. Alliance Counselling are most definitely a Pregnant and Pop partner and an incredible partner with us. They attend the fair. They are in our list of chosen resources, and we refer to them and speak about them a lot in the Pregnant and Popped Village. If you've seen my first of the month, Are You Thriving or Surviving post that I do on the first Monday of every month, then you'll know that they also have a very powerful but easy to use tool on their website that I often signpost a lot of new families to check in on their perinatal mental health. So please, I am Just so excited to have them here. I can't tell you how important this subject is. So without further ado, I am going to stop sharing my screen and I am going to hand over to the wonderful Sylvia and Michelle.
What an introduction. My goodness, I am very excited to be doing this talk now after that very motivating intro to both of us. I'd like today to be not so much didactic in the sense that we are telling you what to do and what is right and what is wrong. I'd like this to be as an opportunity, a space for you to reflect, to think about your own behavior, to think about some of your own struggles. The reason why I chose this topic of guilt is that it comes up in most of my counseling sessions. I don't know many mothers who don't experience guilt. I think it's a pretty rare thing. Feelings of inadequacy, feeling I'm not good enough, feeling I messed up, that I'm not at my best, that I should do more, that I need to try harder, I need to sign up to more blogs and trainings and get more books to be the kind of mother that I think I should be. So it's so pervasive, this profound sense of guilt, sometimes shame and inadequacy, that I thought many of the mothers would relate to this and want to join us today. We will be asking you to do a little bit of thinking on your own. I'd like to talk about, let's define what guilt is and inadequacy, and sharing our own experiences and struggles. I am a mother of two as well. They are no longer babies. I've got an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. So I'm experiencing guilt now as a mother in a very different way, when my child can actually articulate um, exactly what it is that I'm doing wrong. And we will be talking about some psychological techniques based on a behavioral approach to mental health, which is called acceptance and commitment therapy. We call it ACT for short, which is really grounded in this idea of not fighting with feelings and controlling your internal experience, but what can you do in terms of approaches and skills so that these feelings are not so overwhelming and debilitating. So you can get a little bit of space from your own negative thinking and really unpleasant, uncomfortable emotions inside. I'd like you also to hopefully have one thing that you're going to take away from this talk. So as you're, sitting here with us listening, I hope there is one thing that resonates with you that you'll put into practice, or that is a piece of insight that will be helpful moving forward. I like these talks to be practical and helpful. So if we go on to the first slide then, Michelle. So let's think a little bit about this idea of guilt. What is guilt? How would you define guilt? And maybe Michelle, you want to jump in and tell me, what do you think guilt is, and what is mother's guilt?
For me, guilt is the sense of feeling that I'm not able to provide or be there for my child and doing something else rather than being with what I think should be the priority, which is being with my kid right now. And it appears for me in so many ways. Like even today, as I'm on this talk, my daughter is outside and she's crying at the moment. And that's a moment of guilt for me as well. So that relationship has been different as I go along my parenthood journey.
Okay. So maybe you can spend a little bit of time reflecting. I'll ask you to share in a moment. What, how does that come up for you? How does that make you feel inside? And also, what is the difference between guilt and shame? Guilt tends to be more, I messed up. I wanted to be putting my kids to bed and be a super patient mom, like last night, but I was overtired and I raised my voice and I was not my best self. And I could see that just created more tension and stress. So that's what guilt looks like. And then I felt bad inside afterwards, sense of remorse, regret. I shouldn't have spoken to them like that. That's guilt. Shame, it's a different thing. Shame is, what is wrong with me? What kind of person am I? I'm bad. I don't share this with other people. The shame that it wants to stay silent and hidden inside. It's not something that you go on, coffee play dates with the mothers and you go, guess what? I think I'm a terrible person because this is how I'm relating to my kids. Or I find sitting on the floor shaking rattles incredibly boring and depressing, and I cannot wait to get back to work. These are the things we don't share with each other. And many women, and I know some of you here on this talk, will be struggling with some of this. Shame is there is something wrong with me. Guilt is I did something wrong. Can you hear the difference in that? Yeah, that's right. I feel bad. I am bad. Shame could be more pervasive. And we'll talk a little bit about how, why, where does it come from? How is it surfacing? Why now? Does it have a history? Um, I wanted to say as well that guilt often has to do with perception. It's not an objective thing. I mean, sure, everyone screws up now and again. And like, I keep forgetting that my son has swimming on Fridays, and I forget to take his bag, and then his teacher's calling me because I'm that mom. And he does not appreciate that because he's very organized. So, sometimes we screw up. And that's okay. But often it has to do with your perception. So it's a very subjective experience. How do you appraise your own behavior? And who do you compare yourself to? So I'd like us now to maybe go straight to the sharing before we go into the whys, Michelle. If you just put that slide up. I'd like us to all to have a little think, and I really hope you're willing to share here in terms of what are the things that make you feel guilty most commonly, day-to-day life, or maybe there's an event or two that has happened. What brings up the guilt for you? If everyone could share, and I might start myself, and I can tell you that this past May, I actually missed my son's 8th birthday because I had a conference I couldn't miss in the US. And I felt really awful. And he wasn't happy either. And so that was one of my not great moments. And day to day is that sometimes, yes, I'm a therapist, but I'm a human being. So sometimes I am not at my most patient. And kids can really push my buttons. And the reality is not so much about their behavior, but how much do I have in the tank? How much do I have to respond to their needs and their challenges? So I think a common one for me is, especially end of the day, putting them to bed and getting frustrated when they're still play fighting and playing football in the hallway. So I'd love for you to have a little think and just share with us if you're comfortable.
I have one, Sylvia.
Okay. Let us know.
Yeah, this might be it's very similar to you said in terms of like patience and things like that. But I often question myself and feel quite guilty when I feel like I can display more patience with someone else's child than my own child. That my own child seems to trigger me more than somebody else's child does. And that definitely sometimes makes me feel guilty. I'm like, why can't I be that patient in my own setting with my own family?
That's really interesting. I do work with I'm quite a few teachers and nursery teachers as well who have spent all day being wonderful and kind and patient, even with like just horrific behavior from the kids during the day. And they don't have it with their own kids because it's a different relationship. And in the same way that often your partner, your husband, gets treated as a punching bag, the ones closest to us, we don't have those defenses, the guard, the social persona, the I need to have this together. You're not screening yourself in the same way. In the same way, kids tend to be kind of not at their best self around their mothers and their close ones. So they may have been an angel at school and then they get home and you get it because they've been holding it together, being their best selves and trying to refrain from impulsive behavior, being a good girl, being a good boy. They come home and they unleash which is very healthy and appropriate and really hard as a parent. To then, you've already had a long day and you've been at work and you've been putting on that screening. And this is important to note that this, for example, controlling your behavior and impulses and urges and all of that, it takes energy and it is limited, as very interesting research around this. So if you spent all day, especially if you've got a challenging, stressful time in your life, and if you've got a baby, life is stressful. You're making decisions all the time, and you're having to be very mindful about how you respond, say, to your boss. You've got a challenging boss who micromanages you. You get home, you are so depleted, it's very hard to put the filter on with your children and with your partner. So this is just simply it's a metabolic thing that happens in your frontal part of your brain, and it gets depleted. So there was this interesting study they did that couples, families who were having a lot of trouble, they kept fighting all the time, there's a lot of anger management issues. The recommendation was get home earlier. And they thought, but this could backfire because they're spending more time together. So that may be more opportunity for fighting, but it's the opposite, because you get home at a point where you still have something to give. For those of you who have young babies and you are sleep deprived, it's extra hard to feel like a normal human being and respond in the way you'd really like to respond. Sometimes you have to dig so deep to find it in you to respond in a positive way or in line with the kind of parent that you want to be. And you are not alone in this if you feel like you've messed up. So we've got some people sharing here. Yeah. So struggling with feelings when I keep going my meltdowns. It's really, really hard. I've had to practice this a lot. My first child, my daughter, was a very humbling experience, and I'm very grateful that I had her because of the work that I do. My second child is very easygoing. So if I only had children like that, I wouldn't really empathize with some parents' struggles who've got very strong-willed children. Um, and so I think in that case, we would be talking about that. You really need to fill up your tank. You need to take care of yourself for you to be able to meet your child's needs. Not spending enough time. Yeah. Oh my God. For second time mothers, that's the biggest one. The guilt that comes of not being available with your first one in the way you used to be. There's a mourning, a grieving thing that happens there. And also with the youngest one, they don't get the same level of attention that the first one did. Missing child's milestones due to work. I'm with you there. It really hurts. It hurts. It's painful, and there's no way around it. And in really trying to, we'll talk about the techniques on how to cope with this, but I think there is a lot of the sadness and the grieving that happens when you've got conflicting needs, because the reality is that sometimes you'll miss these things. Like I miss so many of these end of school year performances because of work, because of conferences. And that can be a hard experience. In the context of Singapore, sometimes also having helpers and the guilt it can create of leaving a child at home with a helper, or sometimes seeing that the helper seems to have more patience, which of course makes a lot of sense, right? That is her job. Again, we're talking about a different context and a different relationship. So let's explore a little bit why that is. And maybe Michelle can jump in. Where does this come from?
When I dig deep and I ask myself, why am I guilty? I really don't have the answer, because I feel like we put so much expectations on ourselves, even though no one has literally told us to behave in this way. So if I were to make a guess, it would be probably conditioning. Just seeing my own family and my mom being the sole person that takes care of the family, and my dad being at work, it makes me feel like even though circumstances are different now and I'm working, and whereas my mom stayed at home, that I unconsciously put that belief onto myself that I should rise up to taking care of my kid and just taking on the full load and the emotional burden and the responsibilities of the entire household, including my husband. Yeah.
So the standards that we create for ourselves.
Yeah.
right? And often they are unconscious. You are not aware of this, but in the back of your mind, there is a list of, think about this, and this is a great exercise to do after this talk as well. A good mother, blank space, blank space, blank space. If you were to do a list of this, what would you write? A good mother is always patient, is always kind, always puts the child first. Like, what would you put in that blank space? And I can tell you already that is not realistic. Where did you get
Mm.
this from? Was it from your own parents' conditioning? Was it because of what you were observing around, what your friends are doing? Did you pick this up from random influencers on social media? Was it because you've been reading these books on these experts who seem to have it all together? Like it's like almost sometimes it's almost through osmosis, these
Mm.
very high standards we create for ourselves as to what a good mother is. And it's really, it can really, it can have the opposite effect because when you're trying so hard to be that kind of mother, you can end up disconnected because there's this chat happening in the back of your mind. I should do this, I shouldn't do that, I must be like this. And that chatter can get in the way of being present and being engaged
Yeah.
because it's all about that quality of relationship. And when with your child, of being authentic and trying to bring something of yourself that is helpful to the relationship rather than getting caught up with I should and I shouldn't, with that unconscious list that you're carrying with you. I mean, I think some of I think I've done a lot of work in therapy, and I think this is one of the hardest things, to really be kind to myself. And we will talk about compassion and how powerful that can be in this context. But my parents were teenagers when they became parents, and I wanted to do things so differently that that became kind of the standard. So I don't want to be like that. Some elements were great, like lots of fun because they had a lot of energy, but I want to be stable. I want to, be these kinds of things. But I was still in this kind of prison, tethered to what I don't want to be. So it's still not helpful, not flexible. Ideally, you come at this with, how do I want to show up in this relationship in a difficult moment? How do I want to relate to my child? So being mindful and curious about where are these standards coming from? I have
And to,
yes, Michelle.
I just wanted to add to that, that with social media, and social media is a great tool, but at the same time, the shoulds and the shouldn't are a lot more magnified by, influencers or even our own friends. Just seeing them having that pleasant parenthood journey, and not a lot of people post about meltdowns or tantrums or the uglier side of parenthood, and that makes me feel guilty and kind of like, am I a bad mom? And I question myself from time to time.
We hide it from each other. The reason why we set
Yeah.
up a support group for mothers, and the reason why I like these talks to be interactive and for people to share, is that so you don't feel alone. Because especially as a first time mother, and you're thinking, is it just me? And then you go and you have coffee and the babies are playing, and everyone seems to have it together, and it just reinforces the idea that I'm alone in this. I think there's something wrong with me because we're not being vulnerable with each other. And I'm not saying the first time you meet someone, tell them everything that you're struggling with, but I think there are moments in a conversation where there's a choice where you can deepen it and share something a little vulnerable. See if the other person responds, because I know they're struggling too. And the first time when I had my daughter, I was part of this large group, and everyone seemed to have it together. And I was thinking, this something's off with this. And it turns out two of them had quite severe postpartum depression. They just weren't sharing it. It took them a year to really show that they weren't coping, and they missed out on getting our support and friendship at that level. So please share something of yourself, be vulnerable with each other, because we can support each other. You don't have to keep it inside out of shame. Don't keep it inside. Shame doesn't like light, doesn't like to be spoken of, but once you let the light in, it tends to disperse. It doesn't hold the same power over you and to control you and silence you. Oh, yeah. The best way to get your child's attention, so instead of yelling at them and listen to me, is that just sit down with a cup of tea, look comfortable, because they will come to you. Yes, I think that's a lot of truth in that. Okay, so let's talk now. We're halfway through our talk. I don't know if you want to add anything in terms of the understanding guilt, understanding shame. I hope those of you who are joining us today are doing a little bit of self-reflection of your own, thinking about your own behavior and struggles. Where does this come from? What is my a good mother is blank? And you might also be thinking on how to set some healthy boundaries with social media as well. So let's talk about a little acceptance and commitment therapy, and we will talk about this concept of acceptance and embracing reality. So working with mothers, it doesn't tend to work very well to ask them in a psychological intervention that every time you have a negative thought like I am a bad mother, let's find the opposite of that. Let's debate with it. Where is the evidence that you are a good mother? And so some psychological interventions, like, I don't know if you've heard of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. So the kind of the traditional way of dealing with these difficult thoughts was to challenge them, to somehow arrive at a more realistic appraisal of who you are as a mother. Now, I don't find this to be super effective with mothers. I think firstly because they are already so tired and depleted, they don't quite have the cognitive resources to be able to be doing this kind of debating inside. And I also think that the more time you spend arguing with yourself inside, the more kind of disconnected you become from reality and from your child. And I work with very bright women, and some of them very accomplished lawyers, for example. So, they could spend all their time debating and finding evidence against negative thoughts. So, yes, cognitive interventions are important because, you know, really unpleasant thoughts like I am a bad mother will bring a really uncomfortable emotion, and you might feel around your chest or your stomach, or it just feels just so awful inside. So kind of going into thoughts, it's one approach, it's one way of kind of interfere there with that appraisal, that bias that you have when you look at your own behavior. But I don't think that debating it is the answer. And there's something around this mindfulness, acceptance and commitment therapy, which is, what is the mind saying? What is the thought? And really treating thoughts as transient experiences that come and go, opinions of the mind. These are not facts, these are not truths. I am a bad mother. So learning how to recognize thoughts for what they really are, transient experiences that come and go. Thoughts, you can't control thoughts, you cannot stop a thought from coming in. For example, in the context of motherhood, intrusive thoughts of bad things happening. This is very common. Dropping the baby, rolling on top of the baby. I've heard all kinds. I don't want to give you some more examples for those of you who might have a bit of anxiety, but you know what I'm talking about. Can you stop those intrusive thoughts from happening? You can't. But there is a moment of choice after that first thought, with that horrible feeling of, what do I do with this? And I find this approach to be very powerful. What is the thought saying? If it was a sentence, what would it be? And imagining, for example, you can see it typed up on a screen. And we'll talk about how to kind of influence those thoughts so they don't have the same hold over you. But I don't want you to go in and start debating them, because you don't have the resources and the energy to be doing that. Do you want to join me, Michelle? Talk a little bit about acceptance.
So I think, Sylvia, when you talked about thoughts and just feelings and just not having that cognitive ability when we are so sleep deprived, and just feeling those moments of sufferings, that sometimes we can forget that the thoughts are not can feel permanent, but they are also temporary. So it comes and it goes, and just knowing that brings a sense of just that consolation, and just feeling that, okay, even though it may seem like there's no light at the end of the tunnel sometimes, but this too shall pass. And I remember when I had my firstborn and it was COVID, and I felt so lonely that I had an extra baby at home, but I felt more isolated than ever with the lockdowns and all. And I went for therapy on my own, and CBT didn't exactly work for me. But I found at the time what really, really worked for me was just that sense of just being compassionate with myself. I really struggled with insomnia, was just having like 2 to 4 hours of sleep. I just couldn't sleep no matter what, even with medication. And the self-compassion, just knowing that I am not alone in this, and that there are people out there that have challenging emotions, allow me to also accept them in a way where, um, just embracing them, that they are natural, they happen with every mom that's on this journey. And that brings me some sort of comfort, even though I don't necessarily know them. It's really just that sense of common humanity, that I'm truly not alone. Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is you can't control their first thought. Say, for example, I know I'm a failure as a mom, and maybe you've had your, struggles with birthing or conception and breastfeeding and putting baby to sleep, etc. So you can't control that kind of the first thought and then feeling. But then what often happens is that we add layers of unnecessary suffering of what is wrong with me that I can't sleep? you know I'm not going to cope tomorrow. I need to change this. What does this say about me as a person? I'm so useless. I'm so this. So we add layer upon layer upon layer of suffering. So that first experience that normally takes like seconds, we're talking about seconds for that thought, that feeling to kind of come in and out of your awareness. um, but because we add all these layers, it gets stuck and it takes
Mhm.
longer. It becomes more consuming, and then we end up fighting with it. And it ends up influencing our relationship and our dynamic with our loved ones. So there's an opportunity here to really see it for what it is, to embrace it. It doesn't mean I like it. Do I like having these negative thoughts about myself? I don't like it. This is not about putting up with it, being okay with it, and resigning. It's not about that. It takes courage to really embrace that. And also, when you mess up, to really kind of own that. Not at my best, Sylvia. That was not kind of your best. You're not going to win an award for Mother of the Year with the way you handled your kids tonight, but we'll talk about compassion later. But it's okay. You're so tired. You're doing your best. Just remember next time, maybe just, do you know what? Put the TV for 10 minutes. If that's what you need to just go and jump in the shower, have a cup of tea before you engage with the kids again. So learning how to change their relationship with yourself, which is the most important relationship, takes practice, takes sometimes professional support too, takes community, takes role models, but you can change this 100%. And I think that's a much better use of your energy to change the relationship with yourself and how you talk to yourself and treat yourself, as opposed to fighting your thoughts, not wanting to experience those emotions. So, I'd like you to just have a little think about, what do you do to get rid of guilt? Because we all do something. No one wants to feel it. Some of you might go to social media, get busy on your phone. Some of you might be doing the add to cart therapy and spending way too much money. Some of you might be turning to food, alcohol, exercise, and even meditation. I know many people who use, things that seem on the surface to be very healthy, but it's really being used because I don't want to feel like this. And that is not embracing reality. That is not acceptance. That is a fight with it. The more you fight with it, the more it persists. Remembering this. What you resist persists. Don't fight with it. So having a little think about, what do you do sometimes to get rid of that guilt? I use the guise of work because I've got so many things to do. The kids are driving me crazy. So I've got lots of emails to do. So I'm just leave mommy alone for a bit because I need to, so I can get rid of that feeling. And food, unfortunately. to change the way I'm feeling. So have a little think, and even if you don't share, just a little reflection. What do you do to avoid, to get rid of?
So for me, Sylvia, I literally remove myself out of the house when it's possible, because I just need to get away from the baby.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what you need to do. And if you can, and if you've got backup, I think that's a very clever thing to do. I wanted to just popped into my mind. I think some of you with these unrelenting standards of being a good mother, in the same way that some of us can't just sit and do nothing because you've been raised to like be productive. I can't tell you how many mothers I work with that they feel so guilty for like taking time for themselves to, do something that's good. Like maybe they've got Sunday, the whole day free, and, instead of spending Sunday morning with baby and enjoying family time, you just want to go and have a massage and have a cup of tea on your own somewhere. And then they just feel so riddled by guilt. They end up canceling the massage and the plans because they're being bullied by this thought that I should just want to stay home. I should be home because I've been working a week, so I should be home. You end up not serving yourself, and you end up not serving your family because probably you needed that massage and that time off so you can show up as the kind of mother you want to be. So you might end up just, grumpy and not being impatient, and you're not at your best self with them, and you are letting yourself down too. I wanted to bring that up. Um, Also, many women judge themselves for the way they're feeling. I can tell you, I love infants and babies, but I could only take so much of the goo goo gaga and on the floor playing. Like I could do 20 minutes and then I needed something else. Some aspects of motherhood I found so incredibly boring. Nobody was talking about this. I'm like, oh, am I losing my mind? Like, so I would go and meet a friend. I say, please, let's talk about anything other than the babies. And the babies would be there with us and we'd, be interacting, having a great time. But like, I don't want to, if someone else starts talking about baby poo, I'm going to lose my mind. So it's okay to own that. Okay. So you can own that and it's okay. And making it work for you. So I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like mothers often judge themselves for uh, not feeling like they want to be with their baby all the time and being that kind of showing up as that kind of mother all the time. That's not human. You can't do that. Maybe you can do that for 20 minutes and then go and do something else or just let go, be your normal self. And then when you reconnect with baby, you can do that too. Babies can feel the difference. And honestly, it's better from your baby's point of view to have you be present, engaged, connected, mindful in that way for 20 minutes than spending the whole day with them and just distracted and grumpy and impatient. Quite a few of my clients who had stay at home mothers, it's not like, oh, I had a wonderful childhood because my mother was always home. It was, how did she show up for you? How was she like when she was there? It's not just the being around. So, bearing that in mind. Thank you for sharing here your experiences. Oh, hiding in the bathroom. Yeah, I think that can be, a good one as well. Sometimes you need that. And I often recommend to mothers take the longest shower you possibly can. Really take your time in the shower. And I know many mothers also take their tears in the shower too. Let's go on to the next slide. So I hope you've got this idea of kind of embracing and accepting and where do I feel it in my body. So let's talk a little bit about a specific technique which they call cognitive diffusion, which is um, stepping back from not being so submerged and fused with the thought as if it's truth. Okay, it's just an opinion, it's not a fact. So to diffuse from a painful, unhelpful thought, um, you can do things like close your eyes, see that sentence like on a screen, and now. And maybe I'd like you to practice at home with me. Something you mean that you say to yourself. I know the mean things I say to myself. So seeing that sentence on a screen and then put colors on the fonts and you can play around with it, different colors, make your rainbow colors maybe. And maybe you flip the sentence around, like spinning around, and then you stop. So maybe it'll be at a different angle on the screen. And now shrink the font so you can barely read the sentence. And then you make it bigger again, and then smaller. And now imagine that you can add a soundtrack to it. I don't know if you guys are into karaoke. I am big into karaoke. And so maybe just pick a little song that you like to sing in the shower. And imagine there's a little karaoke bowl going from syllable to syllable in that sentence. And I'd like you to sing inside to that sentence. I've got Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive in the back of my mind now because it's one of my favorite karaoke songs. So there's something about um, singing I Am a Bad Mother to Gloria Gaynor that doesn't quite affect you in the same way. Does that make sense? Are you guys all trying this out? I hope you are. Um, I don't, this is not about making fun. And some of your sentences might be quite on the dark side. This is not about making light and making it positive. That's not what we're doing here. I'm just trying to get a little bit of space between you and your heart and that horrible opinion that your mind just came up with, like radio doom and gloom, always judging you, having a go, and you're not good enough. There's something about stepping back that's really empowering. So I hope you've had a go with this. Um, what else do you like to use, Michelle? What are the techniques you like to use?
I know there has been a lot of emphasis with breath work, but I find my space with just tuning into the body and just feeling like my hands on my lap or my feet on the ground and using that whenever there's a negative thought that comes up. Yeah.
Love it. Okay. So the way I was talking about mostly around the cognitive content of your experience, there's a physiological response that happens. And sometimes using your body to calm down your nervous system is so powerful. So breathing in the right way can be so quick at changing your state too. And one of the most researched ways of doing this is to breathe 6 breaths per minute. And what that means is that you exhale for about 5 seconds. So you do 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. You exhale through pursed lips, and then you inhale through your nose and you count to 5. You do the same thing, 6 breaths per minute. Do this for 2 minutes. It will change your whole system. It doesn't have to be burning incense and chanting. It can be very simple, very powerful. Soften your jaw, your forehead, your hands, and your stomach. Breathing out, squeeze your abdomen in. And then as you breathe in, it's like you're inflating that balloon. Sometimes I will do my breathing even as my, you know, especially my daughter's talking at me and demanding something of me, and I will take some time to respond because I need to do this before I engage. So I feel like the breathing practices are very powerful to change your physiology. Sometimes it's the get up and move, go and have a glass of water. Do you need to go outside? Do you need a shower? Do you need to go to the toilet? What do you need a bit of food? Maybe you're hungry. So the physiological side needs some attention. Um, some people will push gently into the wall. Another good one could be just sensory experiences like texture and squeezing things in your hands can help ground you too. And let's go on to, because I want us to finish this actually on talking about compassion, because I think it's so powerful, it's so effective. And the more you practice this, the easier it will be to use this. It's like a superpower. And I want to give this example that, look, I'm a very imperfect person, but there was a moment, I don't know, maybe a couple of months ago. I can be quite forgetful. And I kept leaving my phone everywhere and my glasses. And I'm talking out loud to myself. I'm like, oh, Sylvia, you're so stupid. You keep losing your things. My daughter pipes up. Don't talk to my mommy like that. And I just thought, oh my goodness, that's amazing. I think Yes, she's got it. I think she's internalized this idea of self-compassion and being kind to herself. I think I've done a good job with that. And so she had a go at me because I was having a go at myself. She's like, no, that is not okay. Be kind to yourself. So, I have done it again, and she did the same thing, and I'm super proud of her. But here's one thing I want you to really consider. If your child as an adult ends up talking to themselves in the way that you talk to yourself inside, how would you feel about that? Is that something you're comfortable with? Because right now, I think, okay, 70% I'm okay with it. I'm not going to say 100, but 70% of the way I talk to myself and I engage with myself in my relationship, 70% I'm more comfortable with it. But some of you, if you thought that your child would be treating themselves the way you treat yourself, it's heartbreaking because you're so mean. We are so mean to ourselves. That's what often drives people to seek counseling, to change their relationship. Some of you have grown up in not so ideal homes and childhoods, and your parents maybe were perfectionists. They had high standards. They're quite critical. And sometimes sometimes that parents do to try and get the best out of you. The intention might even be good, but the way it lands and what it does to you, you internalize it. So if you really started listening to it, are you being kind or are you being mean? Because that takes you nowhere. I don't believe in the beating yourself up approach. Okay, fine, you can do it. If you're running a marathon, you hit a wall and you need to go, come on, you can do this. Don't be a wimp. And maybe that gets you through certain moments, but consistently for the rest of your life, do you want to treat yourself that way with a stick? I don't think so. It's not sustainable. It will cause real harm to your mental health. And what do you want to model for your child? So how do you want to teach your child in terms of her relationship with herself? So a good way to start this, I think, is really about changing the inner conversation, the inner dialogue. Try something new. And Michelle, I know you've got lots of thoughts on this as well, on how to do this in a practical way. Do you want to pipe in?
Yeah, and just like what you were saying about the inner dialogue, like our inner critic can be so loud at times. But someone shared with this when I first embarked on my journey on self-compassion that no one else is hearing except yourself. And that really stood out for me because no one else knows the thoughts that's going in and the words that we say to ourselves, they're so loud and they're pervasive and they can happen anytime, anywhere. And it's it's hard. It's really, really hard. But it's so important to forgive ourselves and recognize that we are all perfectly imperfect human beings. Yeah.
So again, this is not, you can do anything you want. It's fine. No one makes mistakes. And I'm not talking about that. We're saying, sometimes moments you will screw up and accept that reality, embrace it. Yep. Own it. And that feels horrible. But I'm saying after that, be quick to forgive yourself. I like to do and I do this, and I don't know what this sounds like, but sometimes I will do hand on the shoulder and I rub kind of the side of my arm. There. It's okay. The comforting of myself. I love the hand over the heart and I will rub it. Oh God, this is really sucky. I feel so awful. I'm missing my son's birthday and this does not feel good. And I will do my breathing and try and let it pass. And um, but changing that dialogue, changing that conversation. So it's say something kinder to yourself because you will need to teach your child how to do this. This is one of my biggest learnings from therapy. And it was not easy because it's also something no one can teach you. There needs to be a shift inside of you. You make a choice inside. Rather than this contraction, beating yourself up thing that you do, there's an expansion to it. There's a softening that happens around your heart, a vulnerability of it when you really do that to yourself. Thinking about, in therapy, we talk about kind of the child part, the inner child, and this opportunity now to reparent ourselves. So, how are you talking to that inner child inside? Changing that dialogue and that conversation, that relationship is the best balm, the best antidote, the best way to heal from guilt and shame and feelings of inadequacy. So I hope, if nothing else, that you will take this away with you. And I hope you will share with us a takeaway. Yeah, just one thing that you hadn't thought about. And what are you going to take from this talk? A moment of awareness, or a little technique that you thought might be helpful, or maybe it's just this shared kind of sense of um, community as mothers, that we all struggle and we have our moments and you're not alone. So, what will be something that you take away with you? We're trying to condense a lot of stuff in this 45-minute talk, but I hope there was something helpful about it. Okay, so I will tell you something else. I talk to my mind, when it starts with the blah, 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 you're so this, you're so stupid, you're so that. So for me, sense of humor is really powerful. And I will sometimes say back to my mind, oh, really? Yeah, I really needed that today. I'm having such a crappy day already. And there you go, piping out. I think it's the 10th time you've called me stupid today. Can we just ease? Just give me a break, okay? I'm tired. Let's save it for next week when it's an easier week. So thinking about your mind, sometimes it's like radio, doom and gloom, always having an opinion about everything. Nothing good will come out of it. I hope you found today helpful. I'm so glad you were here. And this is how you can reach us. We run free support groups. We run a monthly one at Mother and Child. We run a monthly one at Entanglement Mall at Jushiat, at Monksbrew, which is also a little bit of a social. I run support groups for working moms online, which is every other month. So if you sign up for Meetup, you'll get notifications. If you want to contact me or Michelle, you can email admin, they'll send it to us. And we are pretty responsive. And I am still the coordinator for Singapore, even though I'm not there anymore. So if you're struggling, this is the QR code to do the screening questionnaire. It's completely confidential. No one gets the results, not the clinic, not anyone. You'll get the results for yourself, and then you can email it to yourself. You can email it to your doctor or your partner, but it just gives you a sense of where you're at in terms of mood and stress. And so I highly recommend it, because I think way too many women are trying for too long to be okay, hoping that it's just hormones, or I just need to have a good night's sleep and then I'll be fine. So I, please screen yourself to see how you're really doing, and do this regularly, and seek help if you need to. And thank you so much for today. Thank you, Kathy, for inviting us to do this talk.
What can I say? I should be thanking you guys. Such a powerful hour, and such an incredible way to spend an hour with other mums. I know it's hard to connect through the screen, but I really feel that some of the mums and families listening to this will have really been able to kind of resonate with what you were saying, because I think it's so common, and like you say, we just don't talk about it. We don't give ourselves the time or the self-compassion to really stop and process, what is going on in our mind, and how are we exhibiting that back out into the world. So some really powerful tools. I thought I was pretty clued up with some of this stuff as a mum that most definitely suffers or suffered, and to a certain extent still suffers with anxiety. I thought I was pretty clued up, but I've learned some new techniques today. So it's a lot to take into, it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot condensed into a short space of time, but I'm hoping that something, even if it is just a little seed that we've planted today, so next time you start listening to the way you talk to yourself, you change that. And that you get be more curious and not so merged with all these negative thoughts in your mind and these negative feelings.
Yeah.
I hope so.
So powerful, so powerful. So yeah, once again, a huge thank you. Thank you. Please do reach out via those contact details that were shared. There is the More Mindful Mums in Singapore groups, which are fantastic. I've had the pleasure of joining a couple of times, and some of the online work that Sylvia does, on her own time zone, but also on the Singapore time zone, can be really powerful, especially for busy mums. So with that, thank you ever so much to everyone, and I look forward to connecting with you all again. If you aren't already in the Pregnant and Popped Village, then please feel free to drop me a note and get the link to the WhatsApp chat. And I look forward to connecting with everyone in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.